Welcome! In this series of videos we will look at topics common to both the PowerBasic console and Windows compilers. Today we will look at loading CSV files into arrays. In this series of videos we'll be covering topics which are common to both the PowerBasic Windows compiler and the PowerBasic console compiler. In order to do this, I've set up a small common library to allow us to display information on the screen from a program regardless of whether you're using the Windows or the console compiler. There are three basic functions in this common display library. There's prep output, log, and wait. This video was inspired by one of our subscribers who was asking how CSV files could be loaded into arrays and manipulated. So what we've done today is we have a CSV file which has been created from an Excel spreadsheet in the standard Excel CSV format. So we have a first line which has the header names in, and each subsequent line is comma delimited, and in a cell that has a comma inside it, the entire cell is prefixed and suffixed with a double quote. So what we're going to do today, we're going to load this CSV file into an array and then into a two-dimensional array so that each element will be in its own cell. So what we've got here is our standard format. Since we'll be handling arrays, I've put the debug error on, which handles error trapping when you attempt to go outside the boundaries of an array, which is always quite useful, rather than letting the program crash. We've created a string constant for the name of the file. So the first thing we want to do is we want to create an array that's going to be used to put the file into. Now the first thing we want to do is we want to get a handle for our file, and we'll create this variable as well. So we're going to use the open command to pick up our CSV file from the same directory as the executable for input using the file handle we've created a moment ago. Now, having opened that file, we can do a file scan command. This can be used to pick up the number of records in the file. So we will dimension that variable as well. Now we're assuming at the moment that the file does actually exist. If we're not absolutely sure the file exists or not, you're best encapsulating your code in a try catch as so. So if the file cannot be opened for some reason, then you can just log a message to the screen. So assuming the file does exist, we can redimension our array for the size of the file. Now I'm going to start the array at element 0 because I'd like to put the header line into the 0 line. Now since we know the number of records includes the header line, we'll redimension the array to be 1 less than this. Now having redimensioned our array, we can load the entire file into the array using one line of code. This takes the file we've got open and places each record of it into each element of that single dimension array. And finally, we will close off the file handle to say we've finished with that file. And at this point, we should have read the entire file into the array. So to prove what we've actually got so far, we will output to the log the number of records we've actually read. So let's just try and compile that now. Compiles quite clean. If we run that now, it has quite correctly said there are 16 records. So that's fine. However, we'd like to see what those records actually are. So we will create a couple more variables to allow us to step through and display the details. Now we're just going to display the first 10 records in a for next loop. Now what this will do for each of the records, it's going to display the record number and the data within the array. So if we run that now, we'll get quite happily the 10 records we've asked for and the entire content of each element of the array, including the double quotes and all the commas in place. So we've now got the file into an array, but we want to take each element of that, like the first name, into one element of array and the surname into the next element of array. So we want a two-dimensional array to do that. So we're going to have to work out how many columns there are in each element. So we want some more variables. So to work out how many columns, we can use the parse count command. And we're going to use the 0 element, which contains the headers. We'll tell it it's a comma delimited, and this will give us a number, which will be the number of columns. So we'll want to dimension an array to hold our data at this point. And we'll start this one also at 0 for the number of records we discovered earlier, and for the number of columns. So this will be a two-dimensional array. So having set that up, we need to copy the information from the original array to the new one. So more for next loops. So this will step through each of the records in our original array, and we want to do each of the columns as well, up to the number of columns. Now we're going to create a temporary variable just so we can actually see what's going in for each element, and we're going to pick up the value using the parse command. Now the parse command takes an initial value, which is going to be a string. It will then take a delimiter. Now we know it's a comma delimited array, so normally you would put the comma in as the next element, and the final parameter is the column we're interested in. Now one of the problems we're going to have with this data is the fact that one of the columns has an embedded comma in it, and that particular column is encapsulated at either end with a double quote. Now one of the little known features of the parse command is if you take away the delimiter and basically just give it an empty len string, it will work on the assumption, since you've done that, that it is a comma delimited string and it may have double quotes in it, and this will do all the handling of the double quotes for you. So what we can do next is populate our array. Using our long R and long C as being the elements, and picking up the value. You could quite as easily put this entire piece of code here in place of the value, but I'll leave the value there in case you want to use debug to step through this line by line. Now, having populated our new array, let's have a look to see what's going in it. And we will print out some of the data to the log. And again, we'll do the first 10 records. And what we'll do here is we will print out each element for the first 3 elements. So this will be the first element, number 1. And we will put a little dash between each element so we can easily identify them. And we're going to do the same for the second element. And also for the third element, which should be the first name, the surname, and then the address. Now, assuming we haven't made any syntactical errors there, which we haven't, if we run this now, we will see there are the original 10 records with the embedded commas. And in our second array, we seem to have missed the first row. We'll come back to that one. But for each row after that, it's quite successfully brought up the data, as in the first name, the surname, the address, including the comma, without any quotes on the end. Now let's just see why it hasn't picked up the first record. Ah yes, there we are. That's a problem. That should have been 0. We didn't read the first one in, so let's run that again. There we go, that's it now. So there's our header line with first name, surname and address, each of them in its own element of the array, and each record after that has the elements quite happily separated, and it's handling the double quotes at either end of the address for you. Right, that completes this short video on array handling with CSV files. Just to let you know, I've created a second channel covering custom PC hardware. There'll be a link at the end of the video. Thank you for watching.